So this is Crusades Part 2. My goal is to get to 1145. I decided I needed a year. I was originally thinking I was going to try to get to like 1173, but I think I'm gonna be more realistic. I'm tired. It's a long semester. I'm just thinking 1145 is more realistic. The lights are powering down. So we'll see if what that means. All right, so I've got a new wall, maybe better acoustics. We're doing an experiment. I like the wall. It feels very inclusive. Don't you agree? I feel it's very inclusive. Mind-blowing, actually. So, I believe I left off in 1110, 1111. And right about that point, I think I told you that the Tripoli had fallen. If I haven't told you, I guess that's where I'm starting. So Tripoli had a 6-year-long siege. It's one of the longest sieges in human history. The Crusaders are outside, the people inside are holding on, they're hoping that they can get support from somewhere else, and they don't. And in the end, they collapse. At that point, there's a guy in Aleppo. So, in a way, a lot of my story that I'm going to tell is about Aleppo. Aleppo is it's a city, but in this case, it's really a character. And the tragedy, of course, is that large parts of Aleppo are completely destroyed now because of the asinine civil war that Syria that's still going on. And by the way, Aleppo is the center of the remaining resistance. So they're still fighting for Aleppo. Aleppo is an ancient city. I believe it's one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities on the planet, if not the oldest continuously inhabited city on the planet. Its art and its culture are just amazing. It's always been a rival in Syria economically, culturally, politically, with Damascus, Antioch, and Tripoli. Not today, of course, Beirut has sort of eclipsed Tripoli, but Tripoli used to be the one that was on the what is today Lebanon, pushing back, because Lebanon was carved out of Syria recently. It's not an old territory. So when I'm saying Syria, I'm not trying to erase Lebanese. I want to be clear. It's just I want to use the terminology for the time period. So Tripoli was part of this Syrian sort of competition. It goes down to the Crusaders. The Crusaders already captured Antioch, right? That's the first city they take. So at that point now, the Crusaders own 2 of the great cities in Syria. They definitely also want Damascus and Aleppo. These are huge scores if they can get one of them. It would be incredible if they could get both. The Crusaders need them, actually, because what they have is Antioch and Tripoli by 1111. They have Jerusalem, obviously. And then they have some coastal cities, like they've just captured Haifa at this point. They have Acre at this point. They just captured Sidon at this point. So they've got some coastal cities, Beirut, but it's not enough for them to drive their economy, and they don't have enough people. One of the problems that the Crusaders have is there's so few of them. There's so few of them, they shouldn't have been able to pull off what they did. And what they've done is, in large measure, they pulled it off because they psyched the Arabs and the Muslim leaders out. They psyched the Seljuk Turks who were ruling the area out, and they sort of pulled off through psychological warfare something that shouldn't have been doable. So they have to get past that now, right? Because at some point, psychological warfare doesn't keep working. Think of that's what the Nazis did in World War II. Their initial successes were all psychological. They just psyched the enemy out, and then they would win. But eventually, they ran into the problem of the numbers. And the numbers game was never on their side. There was no way for them to compete numerically. They didn't have the industrial capability. They didn't have the number of soldiers. And so eventually, they were eaten to the bone. They were destroyed. And that's what the Crusaders are facing. How do they overcome this problem? And Damascus and Aleppo would be a partial solution. So there's a religious leader, a qadi. He's a judge. His name is Ibn al-Khashab. So, son of the wood. I think that's a fantastic name. The names from the time period are just amazing. Amazing. Nizam al-Mulk has to be the best. Although Al-Afdal Shahan Shah is there too, right? The best leader of leaders. Like, wow. How did you have to get into politics with a name like that. There's no Nizam al-Mulk, is it the system of monarchies? Like, wow. Hey, system of monarchies, how's it going? Yeah, it's fine. Like, what do you say to that? Like, anyway, so, I'm stuck on his name. Ibn al-Khashab decides he needs to somehow get somebody else involved. Because at this point, it's 13 years that the Crusaders have been tearing the area up, and they shouldn't be tearing anything up because they're so severely outnumbered. He goes to Baghdad. So there's something that I should have probably talked about last time, but I didn't, so I guess I have to introduce it now. There was something really strange about the condition of the Arab world. The Arab Empire, by this point, is collapsed, and it's been replaced. I thought of another erasure thing, but this is perfect about the Arab Empire. So last time I said people are reluctant to say Arab Empire. And some of that just boils down to anti-Arab hate, which, we just had a conversation about. Some of it just is part of erasure. When I said that, somebody then immediately responded on YouTube. Actually, this is more than one person, but that the Arab Empire was by no means Arab. And what they mean is the Arabs were a tiny portion of the population, so they were a small minority. Yeah, just like the British Empire was a tiny minority of English. I mean, India was in the British Empire. Like, the English were this. If the Indians had figured it out earlier, they probably could have just ran over them, squished them under their feet. The Roman Empire was minority Italian. The Nazi Empire was minority German. The Japanese Empire was minority Japanese. That's what empires do. It's a group of crazy people who go to somebody else's country and steal it. And they're always going to end up a minority if they keep grabbing more and more. So, again, anti-Arab hate is the only explanation for not wanting to say Arab Empire. The other pushback is it should be called the Muslim Empire. Well, so are we renaming the British Empire, the Christian Empire? The Anglican Empire. That's what it is. But known in the United States as the Episcopalian Empire. Like, I don't understand. Are we going to go back and rename the French Empire the Catholic Empire? Well, that's confusing. Because so is it the Spanish Empire or the French Empire that should be the Catholic Empire? And then when the Italians made an empire, when they defeated Ethiopia the second time they attacked it, because they got defeated the first time, is that the Catholic Empire? I don't understand. So, anyway, fine. We got through that. We're done with this. So, by the point that Ibn al-Khashab is going to Baghdad, there is a Khalifa in Baghdad. That person, for about 200 years, has been nothing more than a symbolic power. They had no real political, military, or economic authority. On paper, they do, but in reality, they didn't. And when, in the time period before the Seljuk Empire starts to get founded, and then the Seljuk Empire conquers Iraq and captures Baghdad, in the time period before that, there was a really awkward situation, actually. So, in North Africa, there were actually multiple Arab states, but Egypt was ruled by the Fatimids. The Fatimids were Shia. And the Fatimids claimed they had their own Khalifa, and they set that up in Cairo. So there's now two people claiming to be the ultimate authority of Islam. And then, in the East, Persia had been carved up by multiple Persianid states. So there's the Ghaznavids, There's the Kakuyids, there's the Buyids. Well, the Buyids were Shia, and they owned Iraq and Baghdad, so they actually were in a position to force the other Khalifa to do what they wanted to. So in other words, the Shia were the dominant Muslim political force at that moment. When the Seljuk Turks begin to conquer Persia, they start in Khorasan and they slowly conquer out. 1037 is the date most people agree is the start of the Seljuk Empire. They will eventually conquer the Buyids and capture Baghdad, and then they just keep going. And they eventually end up attacking the Fatimids. The Fatimids own Syria and Palestine, and they began capturing Syria and Palestine as they're pushing towards the Mediterranean, and they capture it. They take all of Syria and Palestine except for Ascalon. I think the Egyptians managed to hold on to that. They take it, and then they invade Anatolia, and they're conquering the Roman Empire by the time the Crusades start. But that was 1037. The Crusaders arrive in the Middle East in 1098. So in other words, the Seljuks had only been an empire for 61 years by the time they make contact with the Crusaders. They had only owned that real estate for 61 years. They captured Antioch from the Romans. The Romans had just taken it from the Arabs, and then the Seljuks took it back from the Romans, and now the Crusaders have it. So, what happens is Ibn al-Khashab goes to Baghdad because what he wants to do is he wants to shame the Khalifa in Baghdad into trying to get some of the Muslim leaders to send support. At this point, the Seljuk Sultan is Muhammad I. And so he's not the Khalifa, he's the Seljuk Sultan. He's like the prime minister in a way. And then the Khalifa is like Charles III. So he's there, and he actually starts a protest that turns into a riot where they actually attack the Khalifa's palace. And what it does is it shames everybody, and to the point where the Khalifa actually wants to call out an army unit to kill these people, but the Seljuk Sultan goes, no, they have a point. We really should be stopping these crusades. I'm going to do something about it. And he stops the Khalifa from overreacting. Ibn al-Khashab goes back to Aleppo to sort of take up the cause. And Muhammad actually sends an army to try and help sort things out. When the army arrives, he finds that Aleppo has deployed an army, Damascus has deployed an army, Jerusalem has deployed an army, and Antioch has deployed an army. Arabs and Crusaders against the army the Seljuks took to fight the Crusaders. The Seljuks are so angry. They can't believe it. They're like, wait, no, we came here to help you guys fight the Crusaders. You've lined up with the Crusaders to fight us? They turn around and they go home. They're just outraged. Ibn al-Khashab has an interesting position himself. He's not Sunni either, he's Shia also. He plays a major role in Aleppo because he's seen as the Shia Qadi, and the Shia population was significant enough that they're important. But there's a twist in this story. So when we started the story, Ridwan was the leader of Aleppo, and there's this guy, his brother Dukak, was the leader of Damascus, and they don't work together. Antioch falls, those guys. Ridwan was himself under the influence of a sect of Shia that, I don't know how else to describe this, but went off the deep end. So in Egypt, under the Fatimids that were Shia, there was a succession argument. And not to get into the weeds on the succession argument, the Khalifa, the Fatimid Khalifa, his name was Muntasir, he doesn't set up who his heir is going to be, or he did, but his wazir, his prime minister, hides that information. Odds are he did it, it was the prime minister. And the guy that he almost certainly picked was a guy named Nizar. And so what happens is, another son becomes the successor, Mustali, and al-Mustali has the support of the state because Al-Afdal Shahanshah is the wazir who's sort of pulling the strings in the last few years of Al-Muntasir's life. So when he dies, he gets the younger son to become the Khalifa. The older son rebels, he captures Alexandria, he takes an army, he goes to Cairo, he's fighting his younger brother and Al-Afdal, but in the end Al-Afdal prevails. He defeats Nizar's army, he captures Nizar, and he executes Nizar's general, and then he kills Nizar by trapping him into a confined space so that he'll slowly starve or dehydrate to death. Well, that creates the Nizari sect of the Ismailis, who are a sect of the Shia. And that Nizari sect claims that he was supposed to be the next successor. Well, one of those Nizaris is a guy named Hassan al-Sabah. Hassan al-Sabah goes to a fortress on the Caspian Sea in the Elborz Mountains, and he captures this fortress, and there's only one way to get to it. So whoever controls this fortress, you can't dig them out of it, but he manages to capture it. He creates, I think cult is the best word for this. He creates an organization of fanatics who are willing to do anything, including suicidal attacks, to achieve their goals. That sect may or may not have been using hashish, but the name gets stuck on them and they get called the Hashishans. And that becomes the word assassin. Ridwan is actually not only in bed with the Hashishans, with the assassins, he's actually partially controlled by them. And Ibn al-Khashab hates their guts. So one of the things that he's trying to do is he's trying to get other Muslims to jump into the war to fight the Crusaders. He's actually trying to convert the war into a religious war because it is for the Crusaders already. And he's thinking, if I can convince the Muslims that this is Islam versus Christianity, maybe they'll fight. Because right now the Muslims weren't thinking that way. They saw it as an invader, but they didn't see it in religious terms. So he's trying to convince people that it's a religious war. He's trying to get Sunnis to jump into the war. He's trying to keep his own Shia people in the war. And then he's trying to fight the Hashishans without toppling Ridwan, because he needs Ridwan because he's the guy in charge. So it's this really crazy, delicate balancing act that he's doing. In 1113, Sultan Muhammad tries again. He sends another army. This one's led by a guy named Maudud. So by this point, Dukak is dead. When Dukak dies, his son, he has two sons that become temporarily the guy in charge, but his top general replaces the sons and takes over. He's not playing that game. Tokhtakin. So when Maudud shows up, he goes into Damascus. He's walking through the streets, and somebody stabs him to death. An assassin just murders him. Well, the question is, was it Tokhtakin? Was it Ridwan? Ridwan is accused by Tokhtakin. Tokhtakin is accused by Ridwan. Was it the Hashishans? Nobody knows. It was probably Tokhtakin. That's my guess. And the Seljuk army goes, all right, you killed our commander, screw you. And they turn around, they go back again. And at that point, the Seljuk Sultan goes, you're on your own. I don't care what happens to you. I am not wasting more armies and more generals on you. I tried twice to help you, and you've messed it up both times. The Crusaders do make another move on Aleppo. They keep doing this. They'll occasionally launch an army. They go to try and grab Aleppo. And what they end up doing is they grab some of the towns in the area and some of the forts in the area. And eventually Ridwan actually goes and he pays them off so they won't try to take Aleppo. But of course they still want it, so they're still trying to figure out how to do this. And they keep pushing in that direction. And then eventually Ridwan dies. And when he does, his son takes over. His son is a guy named Alp Arslan. So to be clear, because this used to confuse me, I guess in a way it still does, which is why I felt the need to clarify. So when I was telling my story last time, which was the Crusader Part 1, I talked about Kilij Arslan. That's a different guy. But there's also another Alp Arslan. The Alp Arslan the first is the second Seljuk Sultan. I'm not talking about him. I'm talking about another Alp Arslan who happens to just be the guy in charge of Aleppo years after the original Alp Arslan is dead. They're not related in any meaningful way. It's just name coincidence. Like Cleopatra the Fifth and the Sixth. This is my sister Cleopatra. This is my other sister. Anyway, so Alp Arslan, the son of Ridwan, the ruler of Aleppo, when he takes over, Ibn al-Khashab goes, this is my opportunity to clean house. I'll get him to start killing some of these Hashishans, and we can maybe get rid of them and free the city from their influence. So he goes to Alp Arslan. He's like, kill that guy and kill that guy and kill, right? And so Alp Arslan does this. So he's thinking, okay, this is good. I've got this guy. And then Alp Arslan grabs another group of people and kills them. And Ibn al-Khashab's like, no, not them. Let's just go after the Hashishans. And Alp Arslan grabs another group and executes them. And he grabs another group and executes them. And it's turning into this guy has lost his mind. And he goes on a 2-year-long murder spree. He's just slaughtering people. There's only one person in the whole city who isn't terrorized of him, and it's his slave, Pearl. Look. Isn't that cool? That's a great name for a guy, Pearl. So Look decides in 1117, I think that's the year in my head anyway, to stab Alp Arslan to death, as was necessary in that moment. And he does. He just kills him. Might have been 1115. Anyway, a couple years later, Lu'lu is walking through the streets and the Hashishans take out vengeance on him and stab him to death. So it wasn't great in the end for Lu'lu, but it was good for Ibn al-Khashab because he's now stopped Ridwan's son from murdering everybody, and he can now try to stabilize the city. He effectively becomes the de facto leader. He doesn't want it. He's trying desperately to figure out a way to get out of this. And he finally convinces the people to get out of him being in charge. When Lu'lu is murdered, the city plunges into chaos. That was 1117, I'm pretty sure, when he was murdered. The city plunges into chaos, and people are fighting each other. There's like roving factions, and people are trying to take over. Ibn al-Khashab's trying to get everybody to stop. The Crusader army is moving towards the city because they're like, this is awesome, kill each other. It'll make it so much easier to capture your city. And what Ibn al-Khashab does is he talks everybody into letting a guy named Al-Ghazi take over the city. He had originally thought if he could get the Atabeg of Mosul to do it, it would be better because Mosul was closer, but he didn't think that would work. So he went for Al-Ghazi. The Atabeg of Mardin, Al-Ghazi was the guy ruling Mardin in Iraq. So Al-Ghazi shows up. He's got an army to take his city. He's been basically democratically elected. The Aleppans went with Ibn al-Khashab's idea, and they invite him. It's 1118, and he gets there just in time because the Crusader army had set up a siege and they were about to capture the city. Al-Ghazi defeats the Crusaders, drives them off. I mean, he beats them badly. Tancred died in 1117. He's replaced by a guy named Roger. Roger is the guy who tries to capture Aleppo in that attack. They're driven off. Everybody's celebrating. It's very exciting. There was a problem with Al-Ghazi though. He really liked to drink. So I don't mean like, he got a little drunk once in a while. He goes on a 20-day bender where he's just drunk out of his mind after winning this battle. And that's it, he's done. He will not fight the Crusaders again. He spends all his time liquored up. He's just hanging out in Aleppo, enjoying the gardens. And he'll do this until, for 3 years. He just basically locks Aleppo into this drunk fest. And finally his liver gives out and he dies, as you would expect from somebody who drank as much as he did. And that's it. What should have happened when they defeated that Crusader army is he should have immediately attacked Antioch. They were in no position to defend the city in that moment. But by waiting 20 days, he gave the king of Jerusalem time to recover, and the king of Jerusalem, Baldwin II, sends an army up and recovers the city. Baldwin then decides, you know what? Now that I've secured Antioch, I'm going to go attack Egypt. Now, the Crusaders don't have the power to capture Aleppo. They don't have the power to capture Damascus. How are they going to attack Egypt? They don't have the numbers. They didn't. Baldwin II, sorry, it's Baldwin I. I keep saying the second. I mean Baldwin I. Baldwin I grabs 500 soldiers. Think about it. What is that? 18 classrooms full of people? And he marches into Egypt. He gets all the way to the Nile. He takes a bath in the Nile. The Fatimids are so scared of 500 soldiers that they basically just retreat in front of this crazy Crusader army. It looks like he might pull it off. He gets really sick. He probably got bilharzia. Anyway, I have drunk from the Nile. I did not get it. Don't do it, though. I'm insane. You shouldn't do this. I'm probably going to get in trouble with Egypt. I love Egypt. Don't be mad at me. Don't drink from the Nile, though. Jeez. Anyway, I know I just admitted that I did it. I did it in a swan. I figured I was, 80% of the way. Right? All I had was the Sudan and Uganda and Rwanda and Burundi and Kenya and Ethiopia behind me. I figured I was safe. You know what I mean? So, he gets sick. They decide they got to take him back to Palestine, and they bring him across the Sinai. They get him back. He dies. That's it. He's finished. That's how he goes down. So they need a new king. So they pick Baldwin II. I was telegraphing Baldwin II. Baldwin II takes over Edessa when Baldwin I becomes king. Baldwin I is the guy who created the little Edessa, the county of Edessa that the Crusader state had, which is today, it's split, Edessa is split between Turkey and Syria, because when the French were drawing the border between Syria and Turkey, they had that napkin out and they had a crayon and they were just drawing they didn't think about anything. They were just randomly putting lines on the map. As they're drawing the line, they actually split northern Syria off of Syria and gave it to Turkey. And so that's why Edessa is in Turkey now instead of in Syria. Honestly, they probably should have created a little Armenia or something, but it's okay. The Turks genocided them. So there's no point. So Edessa is today Şanlıurfa. So if you want to look it out on a map, look up Şanlıurfa, Turkey. It's in Turkey now, but it's historically a part of Syria. So Baldwin II comes from Edessa. He replaces himself with a guy named Jocelyn. So Jocelyn was a guy's name, like Hillary and Leslie and Ashley and Tracy. All of those used to be guys' names. So in case you're confused about me talking about Jocelyn and a guy, it's what we do is we switch guys' names to girls' names over time, because parents have figured out that we're profoundly sexist. And this is a mechanism for correcting the sexism by trying to help your daughter out by giving her a guy's name so that when people see the name, at least she's not being discriminated against yet. Once they meet her, they'll do it. But at least up front on paper, she'll have a chance. But then after enough people are named Leslie, enough women are named Leslie, people are like, is it a girl's name? I didn't know it's a girl's name. And then they switch to not using it anymore. So heads up on John, Noah, Moses, all of those names will eventually become girls' names. There is a solution to that. We could just stop being sexist, but we don't. I know that'll not happen anytime soon. So Jocelyn is now the guy in charge of Edessa. At that point, now that Il-Ghazi is dead, he is replaced by Balak. Balak, I think, was his cousin. It's not his son. So I want to say it was his cousin. Balak comes, and Jocelyn decides he's going to do a military maneuver to grab something. Balak runs out with his army, fights Jocelyn, beats him, captures him. All of a sudden, one of the Crusader states loses their head of state. He's now a prisoner. Baldwin thinks, oh crap, he just captured Jocelyn. He takes his army up north to go liberate Jocelyn. He's going along the Euphrates. He's got a camp set up. And Baldwin II, the king of Jerusalem, decides now's a good time to start doing some falconry. He's got his goods right. The Arabs love falconry, so somebody had taught the Crusaders falconry, and they're like, yeah, this is amazing. And so he's out there with his falcon, and Balak shows up with his army. And he just surrounds them. And Baldwin's like, oh, hi. And now all of a sudden, the guy in charge of Aleppo has physical possession of the king of Jerusalem. And the Count of Edessa, he's just taken out 2 of the 4 Crusader leaders. The king, the most important Crusader leader, he's sitting on top of it. Everybody's starting to think this might be it. This is the turning point. We're going to flip this story around. You know, it's like 1125. The Crusaders have been here for 27 years and we've already captured their king. What's left to do at this point? So here's what's left to do. So the Crusaders had captured all the cities on the Syrian-Palestinian coast, except 2. They were still missing 2. They were missing Ascalon, that the Fatimids still had it. They had tried to capture it, and actually they had even gotten a garrison into it, I think in 1111 actually. What happened was they had surrounded the town, they were going to put it under siege, but the ruler was panicked, because I think that's what a lot of what was going on. It was just panic. People are freaking out. The Crusaders are so scary with their crazy blonde hair and blue eyes. And then they would just surrender. So this guy, the leader of Ascalon, surrenders. He allows a 300-person garrison in. He pays them thousands of dinars to get them to leave him alone. And the people actually end up rising up. They kill him. They kill like his guard. They go over to the citadel and they murder the Crusaders and they liberate their city. So the Crusaders are so annoyed, they decide to attack Tyre, Sur in Arabic. It's in Lebanon now. It was an island. But when Alexander the Great went on his narcissistic adventure to conquer the Persian Empire, he wanted to conquer everything. So when they got to this place, they had no means to get out there because they didn't have a navy to contest the Persian navy. So he built a causeway to the island. It's still there today and it's now covered in buildings. It's now a peninsula. His causeway became a permanent thing. He built this causeway. Well, the causeway's still there. So the Crusaders ride out on the causeway. They build a tower and they bring the tower up. They got a battering ram and they're trying to capture this place. It's still 1111, I think. And the Arabs actually built a grappling hook that they dropped down and they would grab the battering ram and they would pull and that would tip the tower, so the Crusaders would have to cut the battering ram free to keep the tower from falling over, and then they'd attach a new battering ram and the Arabs would drop a grappling hook and they grab that one. And finally the Crusaders attached a massive battering ram that was too big for the thing to catch. And they got this thing and they're going. So the Arabs just took oil and fecal matter and they mixed it together and they dump it on the Crusaders. The Crusaders are stuck in the stench. They also threw in some garbage waste just to really bring the smell home. So the Crusaders are trying to get the filth off of them, and then they light it on fire. The Crusaders are now throwing water on this thing, trying to put it out. As they're doing this, the Arabs are just dumping more oil, more oil. Finally, the tower is just an inferno, and the Crusaders give up and they leave. Well, it's now 13 years later, and the Crusader king has just been captured. The Crusaders don't know what to do, so they decide, you know what? Let's go take Tyre. It's been like, a dozen years since we tried last time. Let's go try again. They should be able to do it this time either, except something has dramatically changed for the Crusaders. So, one of the problems the Crusaders have had this whole time, so they don't have enough people. So that's driving them nuts. They don't have a big economy, but it's okay. They're fanatics. It's amazing what fanaticism can do when you don't have money. You know? Like, you can compensate for a lack of money if your people are willing to die. If you've promised them an eternity of hanging out with Jesus as their reward, if they do this insane, nonsensical war. It's incredible. You can move mountains. So, okay. But they don't have a navy. And the Fatimids control the Eastern Mediterranean, and it causes them not only supply problems, but it messes with their ability to trade. They do have nice ports, but the ports only work when either the Genovese or the Venetians show up, because the Genovese and the Venetians show up with their fleet. And their fleet is just big enough that they can fight back if they get attacked. But normal trade is just not very doable, because if, it's one ship alone, there's nothing to stop the Fatimids just growing up and seizing the ship. So the Venetians show up, and they go, we're interested. And the Crusaders go, okay, what's it going to cost us? And the Venetians go, so for us, it's about money. We're not interested in this God stuff. I mean, we'll pay lip service to the Pope, but we want 1/4. And the Crusaders go, 1/4 of what? Everything. And the Crusaders go, what do you mean everything? Everything. You capture 4 acres, we get 1 of them. Wait, what? Yep. 1/4 of everything that you make, 1/4 of everything you do. Us. And the Crusaders go, where do we sign? Because they're going to get a navy. And the Venetian navy is a damn good navy. And they sign. So now Tyre has a problem. The city is on an island in the Mediterranean. It didn't have a freshwater supply underneath it. So its only way to have fresh water was cisterns where they stored it, either by catching rainwater or just having it brought there and then they store it there. And then if the city goes under siege, they have boats in the water going and getting fresh water and bringing it to the city. But if the Venetians show up with their navy, there's no way for the boats to go get fresh water. The Venetians show up with their navy. The Fatimid fleet is in Ascalon. The Venetians surprise attack it, sink the Fatimid fleet, go surround Tyre. They're done. It's just when they run out of fresh water. There's no point in asking the Fatimids for help because they're just falling apart. So they think, you know what, that Balak guy, the guy that captured the Crusader King, who still has the Crusader King, I have an idea. Let's ask him for help. So Balak mobilizes his army, but as he's getting ready to go fight to lift the siege on Tyre, Manbij goes into rebellion. The Muslim leader in charge of Manbij, it's in northern Syria. ISIL captured it, and there was a big fight in Manbij at one point. So it got on the news recently, like as in 6 years ago or whatever it was, 7 years ago. The Balak thinks, okay, I'll go put down this rebellion in Manbij, and then once I've done that, I'll go lift the siege on Tyre. How long will it take? He goes to deploy his army, and then he thinks, I'll just leave it in siege mode, and I'll take my force to go lift the siege on Tyre, but I want to make sure everything's in place. So he's inspecting. A stray arrow comes, hits him by the clavicle, and sinks in really deep. He pulls it out, and then he looks at his men and he goes, Islam was just struck a terrible blow, falls over dead. Isn't that crazy? So, the guy who's going to take over now is a guy named Timurtash. Timurtash is Ilghazi's son, Ilghazi the drunk. Timurtash is like 19. He has 2 things on his mind, and none of those 2 things is Aleppo. It's sex and alcohol. That's all he cares about. He hates Aleppo. He wasn't born there. He wasn't raised there. He wants to get out as fast as he can, and he does. He decides, I'm going back to Mardin. That's the town I like. That's the town I know. That's where I'm going to have all that crazy sex and drunken alcohol. But he owns Jocelyn and Baldwin II. So what should he do with them before he leaves? Here's what he does. He has them brought before him. He has a crown of gold. He puts it on Baldwin II's head. He gives him the horse that he got captured with, his hawk from falconry that he got captured with, and he gives him a bunch of money. He goes over to Jocelyn. He gives him a bunch of money. He releases them, and he goes, good luck. And he goes back to Mardin. Baldwin's looking at Jocelyn going, I don't know, it just happened. Do you know what just happened? Is this really gold? It's like, well, this is crazy. I couldn't afford this. What a nice guy that guy was. I'm going to take Aleppo. This is literally the first thing out of his mouth after trying to sort through what just happened. So he goes back to Jerusalem. He gets his guys together and he goes, hey, let's go take Aleppo. So the Crusader army is on the way again. Ibn al-Khashab is like, what is going on? He's trying to figure out how to save Aleppo. There's got to be a way to save this city. He comes up with another plan. It's a guy named Al-Bursuki. He sends word to Al-Bursuki. Al-Bursuki shows up with an army just as Baldwin is putting the city back under siege. Al-Bursuki attacks the army, drives Baldwin away, and saves the city from falling again. Shortly afterwards, Hashishans sneak up on Ibn al-Khashab, and they stab him to death in the street. And then a few months later, they sneak up on Al-Bursuki and they kill him too. I'm thinking, I can't figure out what the title of this talk. Crusades Part 2. Oh my God! Like I feel like OMG or what the hell or something. Because oh my God, what the hell? Maybe that's it. Like it's just nuts. So there's no leader of Aleppo because right in between all the crazy, there was always Ibn al-Khashab holding everything together. But he's dead now. The Hashishans stabbed him to death. And so something's got to give. There's got to be like a break somewhere. Strangely enough, there is a little bit of a break because of the leader of Damascus. When Tokhtigin, so as Tokhtigin's heading towards the exit himself, because he's starting to get old and sick, the Hashishans start to take over Damascus now too. So technically the Hashishans have lost Aleppo, right? Because Ibn al-Khashab, but they keep killing everybody. So Aleppo is just in this state of chaos. But now that Tokhtigin's getting old and frail and weak, the Hashishans take over. And here's what happens. When Tokhtigin is dying, Buri, his son, is going to be the next leader. He's basically a puppet. The Hashishans are totally in charge of the city at this point. Buri doesn't know what to do. He's trying to figure it out. He's thinking, all right, maybe this is just my path forward. I'm going to just be this puppet of the Hashishans, and then I'll just bide my time until I can figure out what to do next. And as he's trying to figure this out, he finds out that the Hashishans are planning to turn the city over to Baldwin II. They're just going to surrender it. They've actually already set it up. They sent a message to Jerusalem saying, we're ready to turn the city over to you. Come get it. And the reason the Hashishans are doing this is because they believe, their religious belief is that the Shia are in sin because of what happened to the guy they thought should take over, and the Sunni are just awful because they're not Shia. And so the only way to correct this is to let the Christians punish them. And so they're going to give the Crusaders Damascus because they believe this is divine punishment manifest through them. And Buri finds out, he freaks out, he decides, I'm probably going to get killed doing this, but I'm going to do it anyway. He rises up and he ends up massacring them in this just daring move, and he saves the city from being captured by the Crusaders. And so when Baldwin shows up, he's like setting up the siege. He realizes he's probably not going to be able to pull it off. He turns around and leaves again, and so Damascus is saved. This buys Aleppo some time to try and get its feet. The Aleppans are like, okay, something's going to have to give. What it is, we're not really sure, but we need another leader from outside. And so they go shopping again. But think about it at this point, right? They've had El Ghazi, they've had Balak, they've had Bursuki. They all end up dying. Now, El Ghazi isn't their fault. That was just alcohol. But still, like arrow in the clavicle and hashish and stabbing you to death. It's not great. It's not great. They finally come up with a guy. There's a few years of chaos, but they finally come up with their guy. The guy is Ahmad ad-Din Zengi. He is the Atabeg of Mosul. Now, he's a problem. He's not perfect. His problem, the reason he's a problem, was because his opening move, the thing that starts his career, like you want that thing to be kind of like your shining thing that you put on your resume. Yeah, I was that guy. So like, for example, John Adams, right, the Revolutionary War hero, his opening move is successfully defending the British soldiers from the Boston Massacre in the courtroom. You're like, wait, what? That seems backwards. Anyway, John Adams is complicated. So, what is Zengi's opening move? His opening move is the Khalifa in Baghdad decides he doesn't want to just be a symbolic figure anymore. He wants to have real power at a moment when the Seljuk Sultanate is being transferred over. Muhammad has died, he's being replaced, and in the process, the Khalifa decides this is his chance, he's going to move, and he makes a move. What army shows up to defeat the Khalifa's army? It's Zengi's army. And so the Seljuk Sultan owes him because he puts down the Khalifa and his army. The Khalifa runs back into his palace and hides. And he's kind of untouchable. It's not like they're going to go into the palace and drag his corpse out after they kill him. Well, not this time. He's not completely untouchable. Nobody's really untouchable. You know what I mean? Like Frederick II went after a couple of popes, for example. You know what I mean? Like, they might be close to untouchable, but is anybody really? The answer is no. It's not how it works. So anyway, so that's Zengi's move, his opening career move. But also, as the leader of Mosul, he wants Aleppo, he wants Damascus, because he wants to make a little bit bigger of a territory. The city is under siege, again, from the Crusaders, and he shows up and he busts the siege. He's greeted as a hero, everybody's really excited. And it looks like he's going to be the guy that stabilizes everything. He's enjoying Aleppo society, things are okay. And then Baldwin makes another move. He decides to bring his army up the coast on his way to Antioch. But here's why. It's not to fight in Aleppo. It's because the ruler of Antioch has died. The ruler of Antioch was Bohemond II. So Bohemond I, then Roger, then Bohemond II. Bohemond II is Bohemond I's son. He looked like him, right? They're Vikings. They're Normans. So he's got like blonde hair and blue eyes, and he wears them in braids, and he's built like a Viking because that's what they are. They were the Vikings who ruled southern Italy and Sicily. Like he's related to Roger II, the guy that creates the Kingdom of Sicily, and who is also a Viking. They're French-speaking Vikings, so it's really weird. You're like, anyway, so here he is, Bohemond. He dies, and here's why Baldwin has to bring his army up to Antioch, because Bohemond II was married to Baldwin's daughter. So her name is Alice, but it's spelled A-L-I-X. So most people just say Alice. Alice. His daughter Alice decides she's going to go into rebellion herself. And she actually launches a rebellion from Antioch. Here's how she does it. She goes to the Greeks, the Syrians, and the Armenians who were living in Antioch. The Greeks, the Syrians, and the Armenians are all Christian. And she goes, honestly, who do you hate more? The Muslims who used to rule you, or the Christians who rule you now? And she goes, they say, oh yeah, totally, the Crusaders are horrid. We totally miss the days when the Muslims used to rule us. Any day, we will bring them back. She goes, so my mother was Armenian, my dad was a Crusader. It's Baldwin, the king, right? That guy. I'm born and raised here. I'm one of you. If you will follow me, let's do a rebellion and let's break Antioch away from the Crusaders. And let's do our own thing. And they're like, you're going to betray your dad? She's like, I am there. I hate these people so much. When Bohemond died in battle, it was a good thing. By the way, just for the record, when Bohemond died, they cut his hair off and sent it to the Khalifa in a glass case. Because his blonde hair was so cool in braids like that. They thought that was really neat. So they just sent it to him as a gift. It's thoughtful gift. Mother's Day gift. It's coming up. It's like the perfect Mother's Day gift. Bohemond II's hair. So she rises up. So Baldwin II is coming to put down his daughter's uprising. As he's reaching Antioch, he sees a knight, a really well-dressed knight, riding up. He's like, okay, what is this? This is strange. They captured the knight. He had on him a letter. The letter was from Alice to Zengi. And it said, I need you to help me. I'm going to rebel against my dad, and I'm going to give you Antioch, and let's go back to the old way. Zengi never gets the letter because her dad does. Her dad kills the knight and goes and storms the city. The daughter puts up a fight, but it's not enough. She needed Zengi's help. And they recapture the city. And that's the end of his daughter's rebellion. So, kind of sad. But it's okay. She had an 8-year-old daughter. So, the 8-year-old daughter, her grandfather, marries her off so that there can be a new ruler for Antioch that's not his daughter. And they bring in a guy named Raimond. It's not the Raimond from earlier because that guy's dead. It's a new Raimond. It's okay. She was 8. It's not, you know what I mean? It's not. All right, it's really horrible. So anyway, Zengi is watching that army go by and thinking, wow, this is crazy. These people are crazy. Like, they turn on each other like we do. At that point, something shocks everybody. John Komnenos, the Roman emperor, decides he's done. He launches an army. He's coming through Anatolia. He's headed straight towards Aleppo. Zengi mobilizes his army. He's ready to go. And he brings it out. He's going to fight. As he's out, he's heading towards Antioch. A letter arrives from the Roman emperor. And it says, it's not for you. I sent the army because I'm going to go take out Antioch. I'm going to put down these crusaders. Zengi's like, all right, you guys are going to kill each other. That's cool. I'm okay with that. I mean, Baldwin's daughter just tried that, so let's see how this works out. So he goes and he's like cleaning up forts in the area, grabbing them, using the opportunity to sort of solidify his power base. And as he's doing that, the Crusaders start negotiating with him, and they talk him out of taking out Antioch, and instead they form an alliance. So now Baldwin II is bringing an army up because now the Crusader army with the Roman army are going to attack Zengi. So Zengi finds out, and here's the deal that the Roman emperor had made. He was going to help them capture, or just outright by himself capture, one of these major cities like Aleppo, and then he's going to hand it over to the Crusaders as a gesture of goodwill. And then that'll be the basis for their alliance. Well, Zengi goes and he sends a message to the Crusaders. He says, dude, if the Roman emperor captures any city in the area, he's never going to give it to you. You guys are nuts. He's here to reassert Roman dominance over the area. He is not here to help you guys in any way, shape, or form. You have got to stop him from doing this. In the meantime, he sends a letter to the Roman emperor saying, you can't work with these guys. They're insane. They backstab each other. They will backstab you. This isn't going to work. You can trust me, though. In the meantime, he sends word back to all the leaders in the area. The leader of Damascus, he sends word to Baghdad, you need to send an army and you need to send it right now. I'm going to be fighting the Romans and the Crusaders at the same time. I don't have the people to do this. He then takes his army and he gets it behind the Roman army and he starts harassing the Roman army. He can't fight them head on. He doesn't have the numbers. And then the Romans will turn around and come chase him, and he'll run off and he'll strike them from another side and harass them. And the Romans will turn to move after him and he'll run off. He's just total harassment mode while he's waiting for Muslim armies to come reinforce him, while he's trying to split the Crusaders off from the Romans. They get a city. I don't remember the name of the city. They get a city that they surround. It's a city in Anatolia. They surround it. They're going to capture it. And eventually, they're lobbing. They've set up mangonels. They're firing rocks into the wall. And eventually, the Crusaders are like, yeah, we're not interested in working with you anymore. And the Roman Crusader alliance falls apart. And Zengi just walks away with this really cool victory that he hardly had to work for. It was just diplomacy more than warfare. And the Roman army turns around and goes home, irritated and annoyed at the Crusaders. And that was that little adventure. At that point, Zengi turns his attention on Damascus. He's starting to think, I own Mosul, I own Aleppo. If I own Damascus, then I wouldn't have to deal with and worry about these Crusaders very much. And then I could secure Damascus, and I wouldn't have to worry about it falling apart down the road. So Buri has died. He's been replaced by his son, Ismail. Ismail is a basket case. He goes very similar path that the Aleppan Alp Arslan went down, where he's like just killing people. He goes totally paranoid. So it's like a Stalin purges kind of paranoia where, you know, people are naming each other and he's just, oh yeah, I'll kill them if they're a threat. And as this is going on, it becomes clear that he is now negotiating with, of all people, the Crusaders again. So he's kind of going down the path the Hashishans were going down. His mother finds out. When his mother finds out that her son Ismail is going to do this, she freaks out. By the way, Zengi had told her, I'm willing to work with you if you can work with me. She rejects his offer. He has an army. He brought it up. He's ready to take the city over. She's like, no, but she kills her son. And then she replaces her son with another son, hoping that'll stabilize things. Zengi's like, all right, I'm going to fight you. He goes and he captures Homs. And then after he captures Homs, he swings into Baalbek, which was the last city that Damascus owned that wasn't Damascus. And he puts Baalbek under siege. In the meantime, I don't remember the next son's name. He sends word to Baldwin saying, I'm in trouble, I need help. So Baldwin mobilizes an army to defend Damascus against Zengi. They make these major concessions. And then, so by the time Zengi gets his army to Damascus, he's got a problem. He's got the city under siege, but the Crusader army shows up. He's worried he's going to get trapped between the two. I skipped a Zengi story. So, a few years earlier, before this, I'm forgetting his name. Al-Mustarshid, the Khalifa in Baghdad, the one that did the rebellion, that was Zengi's opening thing, he does another rebellion a few years later. Zengi brings down an army to put the same Khalifa down a second time, but he gets defeated the second time. His army is so destroyed by the Khalifa's army, he actually barely escapes. And in fact, he's like running on foot because I think he loses his horse. There's a Turkish officer in the area. He ushers him into a place of hiding and gets him to escape. That Turkish officer wasn't a Turk at all, but he was working for the Turks. He was a Kurd named Ayyub. And Zengi never forgets that Ayyub saved him. So, after he's captured Baalbek, he gifts it to Ayyub. This is important because of the third lecture that hasn't happened yet, but will happen. That name is coming back. So I'm planting a seed here. So Baalbek now is under Ayyub's control. Zengi turns to him and says, I'm coming back. I'm going to get Jerusalem. I'm going to get Damascus. But it's not my turn this time. But then he gets a letter. I'm trying to remember her name. I want to say her name means emerald. What's emerald? That's not right. Crap. Anyway, whatever emerald is, I think that was what her name translates into. I feel like it starts with a D, but anyway, she sends a letter to Zengi, and she says, you know what, I've reconsidered. Remember 3 years ago when you offered to take over Damascus to calm things down? What is it? Zamrad? That sounds like that's it, and it doesn't start with a D. It's perfect. She sends him a letter and says, I'm interested. He goes, what are you thinking? And she goes, why don't we get married and then I just turn the city over to you? He goes, okay. And so he brings his army out. They have the wedding ceremony. He gets married. And then he's like, all right, are you going to hand the city over? And she goes, no, because my son won't hand it over. They stay married for about a year. He realizes this isn't working out. He divorces her. And then he decides he's going to try a different approach. He'll try a couple more times, but with the Crusaders defending the city, he just can't break it. And then something interesting happens. Jocelyn II, who's replaced Jocelyn I as the Count of Edessa, that guy makes a mistake, a military mistake. Zengi realizes this is his chance. He races up to Edessa, he attacks Edessa, and he captures the city. All of a sudden, the first Crusader state has just been taken out permanently in 1144. So at that point now, there were 4 Crusader states, they're down to 3. Jocelyn escapes. He dies like 15 years later. Like, he gets to live a nice, long, happy life, but he's lost his Crusader state. And so at that point, what Zengi now has is Mosul, Aleppo, Baalbek, Homs, and he has Edessa. He's carved together a little bit of a state where there wasn't one. In a place, in the Seljuk Empire, which is literally falling apart. Because in the meantime, the Seljuk Empire is plunging into civil war. And the civil war is so bad, the Seljuk Empire will only exist for like another 50 years. It literally just tears itself to pieces. So it was a short run. The whole thing was a short run. It was poorly run, and it falls apart. But actually what's really crazy is it started off really glorious. So not only were the first Tughril I and then Alp Arslan I, the Seljuk sultans, not only were they really amazing guys who just carved an empire out of nothing, Alp Arslan made his wazir Nizam al-Mulk. Nizam al-Mulk wasn't just a political leader, he was a philosopher. He was brilliant. He wrote the Siyasatnameh. The Siyasatnameh was this book that explained how you should be a leader. Ibn Khaldun, a couple of centuries later, is going to read that book, and a lot of what Ibn Khaldun comes up with is directly drawn from that. And then, 2 centuries after that, a guy named Niccolo Machiavelli is going to read that book, and he's going to turn around and write 2 books, The Prince and the Discourses on Livy, largely based on what he read from Nizam al-Mulk's book. In other words, even though the Seljuk Empire is just coming apart at the seams, and I'm telling you this horrible story of these guys turning on each other and backstabbing, and there's assassins running around, and at the drop of a hat, they're betraying each other and working with the Crusaders, or they're working against the Crusaders and the Romans, right? In the beginning, there was actually this really glorious moment. But not by this point. Those fights with the Khalifa have triggered a civil war, and now there's a line of succession. The Seljuk state is basically split in 2. And then Zengi's thinking, I'm kind of on my own. He's carved out his own state within a state. He has a state right? He still technically is a Seljuk. He's never not been a Seljuk, but he's ruling this territory with his own army, his own military, his own economic system. And 1 year after he captures Edessa, he dies. But he has established something. He's planted a seed, and it's slowly turning into a tree. And he's been on the scene now for a long period of time, right? All the other leaders are like the leader of the place for 3 years before they're stabbed to death, or an arrow kills them, or they drink to death. This guy goes for decades. As a result, and with that seed I planted with Ayub and Baalbek, what's going to happen next in part 3 is a little bit of recovery. But before that happens, when Edessa goes down, the Pope calls for a second crusade. And the second crusade is going to be another wave of crusaders who are going to march across Europe. Now, at some level, this is a reinforcement crusade. The soldiers coming are going to reinforce the existing crusader states, but they do have as a goal to recapture Edessa. They won't. They're not going to pull it off. One of the crusaders who's coming is a German named Frederick Barbarossa, Frederick Redbeard. He's the only commander who will participate in 2 crusades. He'll also come on the 3rd crusade. So anyway, that's where I'm going to end this, because I said I was going to get to 1145, and I did. I even killed Imad ad-Din Zengi. Like, I'm feeling like I achieved my goal. I got us there. And I've even triggered the second crusade, which we will cover in part 3. I guess that's kind of wrong. We should have covered the second crusade in part 2, but there's no point at this point. Right, when you think about it, though, the crusades themselves only last a short period of time, and then the crusaders rampage in between the crusades. And for the record, I'm doing 4 parts. There's only 3 crusades that arrive in the Middle East. So when I cover the 3rd crusade in part 4, you see what I mean? It'll still work. I'll also cover the 4th crusade in part 4, but the 4th crusade never makes it. Which is why it's such a cool crusade and totally worth talking about. We're going there, and then they don't. They go there. And it's, like, wow, did you get lost? You have an American public school geography knowledge. I know what this is. Yeah. Questions? Is 1199 in part 3 or part 4? 1199 will be in part 3. Yeah, so 1187. That's the year I'm excited to talk about personally. But so then, when part 4, I'm really going to be covering. I guess you're right. The 3rd crusade will be in part 3, because that's the 3rd crusade. 1187 is the end of the 3rd crusade. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Maybe I'm being too ambitious with part 3. I think I can get us to 1187 in part 3. Maybe I won't get to 1199. I'll try. 1258, 100% should be in part 4. 1258, 1291. I'm thinking that's part 4. That's my plan. We'll see. Maybe there'll be a part 5. All this backstabbing and cruelty, surely it's joyous. Like you're getting something out of it, right? No? All right. Thanks. Wait, any other questions? Okay, good. All right. Thanks.